Welcome to Module 1, Lesson 5, Part 2, Sources of Change in Developing Technology. Today we're going to talk about developing technology. How do we make research a reality? Research shows us how a product or a technique can work. So it's the how and how does it do this. And development takes that how and makes it into a working process or product. Okay, so research is the why and how. Development is the let's use it. How do we use it? In the early 1960s, there was a guy named Lee Iacocca who worked for Ford Motor Company. He was a young design engineer. Now, think about what people were driving in the early 1960s. Sedans, big cars. We hadn't really gotten into muscle cars yet, but it was big cars. If you wanted a domestic sports car, your choices were a Corvette, pretty much. And Corvettes were expensive, as they still are, and they're two-seaters. So most people couldn't afford it or needed more than just two seats. So here's Lee Iacocca, and he's like I said, a young design engineer, and he goes out and he starts trying to figure out what people want. And he realizes that a lot of people, young people out there, want something that is sporty, yet affordable, and maybe has a back seat, a little bit more roomy. Something if they had a kid, they could put in the back seat. So he designed the Ford Mustang, and he went to Henry Ford II, who was president of Ford Company, and he pitched his idea. Well, Henry Ford II thought that Lee Iacocca was crazy, but Lee Iacocca persisted and showed him his research and all this other stuff, and they said, well, what the heck, we'll try it. So in the middle of 1964, they decided to produce the Ford Mustang, which then ended up in its first year selling 400,000 vehicles. So Lee Iacocca took his research, he developed something geared toward the needs of the consumer, and lo and behold, we have a product that was a success. We still have Ford Mustangs being produced today. In the 1980s, Lee Iacocca stayed in the automotive business and became president of Chrysler Corporation. Now, Chrysler Corporation at this point was bleeding money. They were on the brink of extinction. They were losing money so fast it was sad, and in order to save the company, the government stepped in and loaned them money. This was the first time they did that. So Lee Iacocca became president of Chrysler Corporation, and he's looking around and he's looking at the consumer, his customers. What do they need? What do they want? So back then, the only family vehicle you could get was a station wagon. But the problem is that they were starting to have car seats and things like that were cumbersome. And I don't know if you've ever traveled with a kid, but they need all kinds of paraphernalia like strollers and other stuff that kids have. Well, what Lee Iacocca saw was that families, it was very difficult to fit all this stuff into a conventional station wagon. On the other hand, his company produced vans, and vans basically were there to put stuff in. So he said, why can't we take the van concept and make it into a family vehicle? And lo and behold, the minivan was created. And it caused a complete change in the driving habits and buying habits of families, because they said, oh, we need this room, this is roomy, and they started buying up minivans. There's not one automaker in the world that does not produce a minivan today. Now, Lee Iacocca turned what was a company desperately trying to survive. In a couple of years, he made it so that they were not only making a profit, they actually had paid back their full loan to the government early. So one of the things we need to understand is that A new product or process must be developed based on meeting actual or potential demands. Now, sometimes we don't even know we want it, like with the minivan. Here, Toyota in the 1980s put cup holders and decided to put cup holders in the consoles of their car. And people are looking at them and saying, "Are you crazy? You know, that's not going to fly. People aren't going to want that." Well, think about what was happening. Most people were starting to go through drive-throughs and drinking and eating in their cars. And if you've ever tried to drive drinking something and not had a place to put your drink down, it's very awkward and it's a pain. They used to have these plastic, things you could stick in your window, but those didn't really work real well. Well, think about today. We didn't realize we needed cup holders, but you can't get a vehicle today that doesn't have one. They have cup holders on uh, strollers. They have cup holders on shopping carts. There's cup holders everywhere. So Toyota meant a potential demand that people didn't know they needed or wanted until it was there. So let's talk about demand and how it affects advances and things like that. We talked about effective demand, and we said that effective demand needs a technology to exist, to be needed or wanted, and to be affordable. Now, belated demand, now think about the word belated, it means late. So belated demand occurs when the uses of a technology might not be immediately known or apparent, or when the original uses are kind of morph into something else. We start using something originally intended for one use for something else. So let's think about this. 3M, anybody who's ever used a Post-it note, what was happening was that a guy was trying to develop an adhesive for a specific purpose. And he ended up developing this adhesive that he found you could stick papers together and you could lift it off and stick it again. And he didn't really think anything of it, and it was just this thing. And somebody in the office said, "Geez, I kind of like that idea. Can I have some of that?" And the next thing you know, they're making pads out of it. And now we have this huge industry of Post-it notes because people would rather use a Post-it note than they would a paper clip or a staple because it doesn't harm the paper. So that's when we have developed something we're not quite sure what to use it for yet. The other thing is if you think about the phonograph. Originally, Edison developed the phonograph to record the dying words of famous people. Okay? Their last words, which is kind of creepy, if you ask me. Well, it ended up that most people used it for entertainment, to play music, on. So the original use actually became, was set aside and we used it for something else. The same thing with the telephone. Alexander Graham Bell decided that he thought that they would use it to broadcast music and concerts and operas and things like that. And what we really used telephones for was personal communication with somebody far away. So we didn't use it what it was originally intended for. That's belated demand. Technology advances in basically two ways. One is the refinements and improvements to existing ways of doing things. So we have that cumulative and dynamic. It has to be better, and we're building upon previous stuff, right? And then sometimes we have these revolutionary breakthroughs where we're really not sure where it's going to go. Okay? So we come up with a personal computer, but we're not sure where it's going to go. I mean, I'm sure that the guys who developed in Apple didn't really see how all the uses that people are putting their computers and their smartphones to. So it's usually hard to determine, but it's there. So that's where we see these advances. Let's talk a little bit about economic systems and technology. There's two types of economic systems. One's a market economy, which is very capitalistic. You can equate it with capitalism. And then there's a planned economy, which you could pretty much equate with, say, communism, small c, communism. So let's look at a market economy. There's the ability to own private property. And when you own your own property, not just a space, but materials and equipment, it means that you have individual control over those production factors we talked about, labor, land, and capital. There's also a strong profit motive in a market economy, right? I'm not going to do anything unless I make money. I want to make money, so I'm going to come up with something new that I can sell, right? Unfortunately, there's a whole lot of competition out there because there's a whole bunch of other people out there who want to make money. Okay, so I am competing with a bunch of people. This strong profit motive and this high degree of competition fosters individual innovation. It makes me want to try harder and come up with better and newer ideas. Okay? However, there's also the problem that I risk coming up with an idea, but 5 minutes later somebody coming up with a better idea. So I've put all my life savings into this one technological innovation or pursuing this technology when people have like jumped ship and gone to somewhere else and I've lost all my money. Another thing about a market economy is the type of technology that it will pursue. Because I want to make money, obviously I'm going to come up with innovations that people want. Not necessarily innovations that are going to benefit everybody. Okay? It's will they pay for it? So I'll come up with a diet pill, but that doesn't necessarily, I could have spent that money coming up with better ways of providing nutritious food without harmful chemicals. Well, where's the profit in that? So you see where I might want to pursue the diet pill technology as a side from the other technology. So let's look at a planned economy. In a planned economy, which is also the internal economy of large corporations, property is usually publicly owned, which means that there's a central control over those production factors of labor, land, and capital. And these production decisions are under the control of that central authority, a committee or whatever, right? There's little incentive for individuals to be innovative because I'm not going to see, I can come up with great ideas, but if I don't profit from it, I'm not going to bother because it's not going to benefit me directly. Okay? Also, a lot of times in a planned economy, you're working under a quota system. So who wants to take a manufacturing line down for 3 months? You don't make quota, nobody makes money. So you're less likely to try to pursue innovation in that individual innovation in a planned economy. On the other hand, there's a lot less risk and a lot greater predictability of where you're going and where you're putting your resources because you have a plan. You have a 5-year plan or whatever. This is what we're going to do, and we're planning this out. So you can see the benefits and the drawbacks of each type of economy. Let's talk about bureaucracy. When I say the word bureaucracy, most people think red tape, forms, headaches, aggravation, okay? But bureaucracy actually is the orderly administration of a company or an organization. You need forms, you need people to fill out reports, you need to profit and loss statements and things like that because you need to have that information in order to be able to cut problems off, make sure you're tracking where things are going, that kind of stuff. The problem is that the larger an organization or company gets, the bigger the bureaucracy gets because all you got to do is look at the federal government. Okay? Because of the aggravation, people are reluctant to try new things because they have to fill out forms. So what happens is there are things called skunk works that are these small subversive units, and these are people who will go outside the norm, work outside the bureaucracy. And sometimes it's unofficial, like the guys from Apple, leaving and going to their little garage and coming up with innovations unfettered by the behemoth of IBM. Or it's a company that understands that innovation needs to be free of all this other garbage. So they take a group of people and they say, listen, don't worry about reports, don't worry about how much you spend, just do the innovation. The trade-off there is that they have to come up with the innovation. Okay? So we have this sort of like subversive unit, attack unit. There are non-economic sources of advancement, and those are usually, and they don't meet the effective demand, and those are usually medical and military advances where we really don't care how much it costs. We want you just to develop it. We want you to save lives. If it comes to saving lives, we don't care how much it costs. Okay, so next class we're going to move on to the environment, and these are the things we're going to discuss. Environmental change, carbon combustion, greenhouse,